Hello and welcome to another episode of International Immersion. If you guys haven't seen our recent episodes, you know that we used to be called International Insights. In order to brand ourselves into a more specific, unique name, we've decided to change the name from Insights into Immersion because we're immersing ourselves into this great culture of planet Earth. As always, we are here, me, Germán Rivera, as your guest, and Sean Severson.
Scarlett.
And Scarlett.
Scarlett
is joining us for the first time. Hopefully we don't scare her off too much.
I'm sure we won't. At least I hope so.
So, today's topic is college life. We have two parties here that have been able to experience college life not only in their home country but in a foreign country, which is night and day possibly.
Yeah, very, very much so. And if you've listened to our previous episodes, you have noticed we did one about studying in China. And today's podcast will overlap with that to an extent, but because we have our guest here, we can actually get a good take from both ends and experiencing basically an opposite perspective, an American going to China and then a person from China coming to America for college purposes. So we thought it'd be a great way to get both points of view and share what are the similarities and what are the differences and really kind of highlight for everyone what we've experienced, what are some general experiences, and then maybe give you an idea of what you can expect or what you maybe expect now, but it may not be the case.
Yeah. So, as any college student that travels to university, right, out of state and maybe even in-state, the number one thing of that college experience is going to be your housing. Whether if it's internal school housing or maybe renting an apartment outside of the school. You know, I personally never got that chance. I always lived at home, so I was...
Hey, nothing wrong with that. You're saving a lot of money, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, saving a lot of money.
I'm living off campus right now because college dormitory can be really expensive.
Yeah, no. Plus, like, don't they put like living restrictions upon you? No.
I think it depends upon the college, and I know there are differences between if you like live in a on-campus like residence hall, or a standard dormitory, or if you have more of an apartment. Like on-campus apartment, of course, I think the residence halls will naturally be more restrictive than an apartment living.
Yeah, I just used to remember like people saying that they always had to like check in like after a certain time.
Oh yeah, I know that. So having experienced some dorms, you have to check in or you have to scan your school ID card to get in for some, but it really can vary based on the school.
So, and I mean that was always like a big so. Living in dorms in a foreign, I guess here and versus a foreign country, what are kind of your guys' like views on it?
Where did you live while you were in China?
So just kind of long story short, when I did my undergrad in the U.S., I lived at home because my college was close to me, so I didn't think it was worth it to spend the extra money to live on campus when I could drive to campus in literally 10, 15 minutes. But when I did my master's in China, I actually did live in a residence hall. And that was the first time actually I lived in, an on-campus, living arrangement. And it was, so I can't really say exactly what it's like to live in a U.S. dorm because I never did, but I had friends who did and I've been to them. So I can give some point of comparison. But I would say that the dorms that we lived in China at my university, they were specifically designed for international students, and they had more of an international standard. Because when I discovered what the standard Chinese dorms were like, they were pretty different. Maybe not quite night and day, but not too far off of it.
Yeah, didn't you say that they were more compact?
Yes, much more compact. At minimum, 4 people to a room. And what I remember very fondly was that what they would have is they would have a desk a desk, and above the desk was an attached bed. And there would be 4, 2 on each side.
That's very typical in China. This is a typical Chinese dormitory.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I would visit my friend in his dorm, and I remember I'd come in, and he'd have his other 3 roommates doing their stuff, and we'd be chatting, and it was much more condensed.
Yeah.
There was no personal room. And what also really kind of threw me back was when I looked at the actual beds, they were just wood planking with a sheet. There were no mattresses on them. And I'm like, what? Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of interesting. Now, maybe that was just that dorm or some others, but it was definitely different because just opposed to me and my roommate's dorm, we had, it was generally more space, 2 standard beds with, box spring and a mattress sheets.
You have mattress?
Yeah, we had full mattresses.
You have mattress provided?
Yes. Everything was provided.
That's not the case for Chinese students. I think
the
students can always bring your own mattress, but they don't give you anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at first, yeah, like I said, when I first arrived, I thought, oh, this isn't too bad. But once I saw their dorms, I'm like, oh my God, I am so thankful for what I have now. But, it's bad, but it really makes you appreciate just kind of those basic amenities that, you have here in the States. And not to say that I don't have them in China, but I did see that at the university level. It's much more...
Oh, they're being too nice. International students.
Yeah, so that was... but no, that was just my general experience, is that they were very comfortable. They weren't... Nothing fancy, but very comfortable, and you could easily, use it as a living space and not really suffer in any way.
Oh, nice. Did you ever have any noisy neighbors?
Yes, unfortunately we did, because the international dorm we had students from so many different countries, and it was like a resort sized building, like the one you see down in Florida or at a vacation spot. There were like a lot of students, 80 plus students per floor, and it was like 13 stories, so it's very big. Yeah. So we had students from all over the world, and we had a lot of Korean students in kind of living close to us, and they would party all the time. And me and my roommate really got fed up with it, and because they keep partying 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and we really got sick of it after a while. And nothing bad against them in general. It's just they tended to be the biggest partiers in the dorm, and so that was kind of annoying. It wasn't all the time, but
that's why you mess with them when they're crash. You just turn up your speakers, man, and just all.
Well, actually, my roommate, he bought a piano. And one day, I came back to the dorm, and he's like, "Hey, Sean, guess what?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, all those Koreans that they've been causing all the craziness in the dorm. He's like, "Guess what theme I learned?" He starts playing. It's the Halloween movie theme on his piano. He's like, "So we'll do this at night, and we'll scare the crap out of it." I'm like, "Oh, I like the idea, but I don't want to get kicked out of the dorm for scaring everyone half to death." But that's just one funny example. But other than that, they were very good, and many of my classmates actually lived just down the hall, so we could get together to study and many other things. So, but definitely different as opposed to living at home or the dorms in the U.S. where they're much more standard: 2 people to a room, maybe 3 max, at least from my example. So, Scarlett, kind of just opposed to what I'm saying, how would you describe your college experience living on campus?
I remember my college dorm. I took my undergrad in Shanghai. Yes, and that was my dormitory was pretty good. Was really good enough at that time. And there were 6 of us living in 2 rooms.
So was it 3 people to a room?
4 people in one room and the other 2 living in another room. And we have two bathrooms. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the best in that building at that time. Yeah. And not very expensive. I cannot remember anything different from your typical dormitory, but it's still very crowded. It's only a place for you to go to sleep, and it's not a best place for you to study or hang out.
Yeah, that definitely was kind of the difference that I saw as well. It's like my Chinese friends, they could study in there. They had their desks, but it was still very cramped. Whereas our desks were actually on the wall in front of our bed, and we had much more space just to go there and do work. And you still have your roommate. He's next to you, but you have your bubble a bit. You can set your desk up, you can do stuff, and you're not so kind of crunched together.
So, what would you say the ratio of like you being actually in your dorm room versus like being out somewhere else? Like I think like dorm rooms, like especially with the size dimensions that you guys kind of saying, like I wouldn't even want to be there more than like 4 hours.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
you can make it comfortable for yourself. You can bring your own mattress and keep warm. In Shanghai, it is cold in winter. I'm from the northern part of China. The temperatures can be really. It's killing me in Shanghai in winter. So I brought like mattress and electronic mattress that can heat.
Electric.
But that is not allowed back then because they have like control of equipment that you bring.
Let me guess, they probably were worried about fire hazard.
Yes.
Yeah. We had that same issue. There, like students couldn't buy like burn plates or other types of things and bring them in, even though they did. Yeah. It was for fire hazard.
Yeah, I had a blanket, but I always have to hide it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't so bad with us. I mean, in our dorm, there were so many things that people shouldn't have had that they had, but I think that like the security guards that were always down in the lobby, they never really cared too much. I can't really say why.
No, they literally will just walk into the dorm and check.
Are you serious?
Yes,
what?
But they did not do that to you.
No,
because you're from a foreign country.
Now I will say one time
they did that
when they had the G20 in Hangzhou in 2016. The police came and they went to all the dorms and checked everything, and that was the only time.
No, police won't come. It's just the security is in this campus. It works in the dorm. They will check. They will come in. They have keys to your room. They come in and
that's a little scary.
They check it every day. So I have to hide everything. My roommates had a little pot, which is not allowed. That's why there's pot to make some instant noodles or hot pot. You can make hot pot, but we always did that at night or when we know that there are no people around.
Good luck. Good luck that happening in the U.S. I mean, people complain like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I would understand like maybe like a monthly type of thing, but like every day that seems like excessive. Yeah,
quite excessive.
That was like 10 years ago. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they do now, but
yeah. And I can't completely kind of give you an equivalent because I never actually stayed in the Chinese dorms. I've been over there with my friends and stuff, but never stayed and never witnessed any of that in person. But I would say that the Chinese dorms, they would cut the power between 11 and midnight.
What?
They didn't do that to you?
No, they didn't. No. They didn't do that to us in our dorm. So literally after like 11 or 12,
after
like it was lights out.
You're supposed to go to bed.
Yeah.
Well,
so
you don't have electricity.
That's impossible. We in engineering got most of our work done at midnight.
Well, Alex, I know, but I mean, the Chinese dorms, they would cut the power at around 11 or 12.
I remember that when I was like first and second years in college, I lived in a dorm like that. But after in the third year of college, I moved to a different dorm. It's a building outside the campus, so we have electricity and hot water 24 hours.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was quite surprising, but they didn't do that with us. Now, so naturally, given there's so many international students, there were a lot of parties. Nothing really crazy like some of the things you think of it like at my college in the U.S., but there were still some pretty fun parties I went to, and they even had like all the Thai students organized like their annual water festival they did in Thailand.
Oh, they did. That's awesome.
They got like I think 400 or 500 of international students and Chinese students together. They all had a big water fight in the courtyard. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And the Chinese staff and security were like, God help us. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would say it was much more carefree. But my last year there, they started to get clamping down more. Like when I first started, you didn't have to check in when you got in. When I left, they actually installed things where you had to scan your card and let you in. So they did clamp down more and more.
But that's still within reason. That's not like body cavity searching.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely some similarities, but also some large disparities from kind of comparing dormitories.
So as you guys were partying it up in dorm land, the other 50% of your life is classes, right? Your actual job as a student, their 40 hours.
Yeah, and I think that when we move from going into classes now, there's going to be, of course, a lot of similarities, and you go to college, you go to class, but how the classes are set up, how they're organized, and how your professors actually instruct the material can vary. And I would say, kind of starting this off, my undergrad in the U.S. versus my grad in China were not all that different, although I did notice that among the Chinese professors I had in particular, they're much more lecture-focused and not so much discussion-focused. Whereas my American professors both were much more mixed. So, and because my professors when I was in China were from China, Japan, and the U.S., you could see kind of this difference.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I got a lot out of my classes, but I would say in some courses they could have done more critical thinking and analysis, but at the same time they maybe actually covered more material, generally speaking, versus than classes here.
No, I get that though, because I had one Japanese professor who was very much like, here's today's outline, and we're gonna cover and then that was pretty much it. Like if we had time, we could make discussion at the end of it, but it was pretty much procedural in and out type of thing.
Very very mechanical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still getting used to American classroom because I'm having my graduate program here, and there's a specific program. It's like a cultural study, and there's a lot of discussion. And students are so outspoken. Yeah.
Yes, I would say that, and that's a great point.
What do you really learn from all these discussions? I'm still figuring out.
Yeah, because I would say that the Chinese students we had and the international students, generally speaking, were much more outspoken, and we would be go into debates and discussions much more in depth. And the Chinese students, they would never really I wouldn't say contradict, but they would never really kind of maybe voice their own opinion or their own ideas as much. And I remember there were classes where our professor, one course in particular, we had a big 30-minute discussion about global economy. And the last 5 minutes, he finally said, "Okay, do any of the Chinese students want to involve themselves now?" And they didn't. And I could tell he was really like, "Hey, come on, we get a discussion. The international students are doing. Come on, we want your take too." Because the chair of our program, he'd been educated in both countries, so he was kind of he had more of a hybrid approach, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
But that was definitely a big thing, and I think that discussion allows you not just to learn it, but learn how to implement it.
Exactly.
Which I think is a big difference between the two systems. There's a lot of memorization and just ingesting of knowledge in Chinese courses in China, whereas the U.S. is kind of more both.
Yeah.
I think it's I understand this situation in a different way because Chinese students are trained very differently. Before they go to college, they were under very strict training because they always want to be right. They always want to be correct. So while Chinese students are sitting in the classroom, they're trying to figure out what the professor is intended to do. They're trying to do the right thing. So sometimes they keep very reserved about their own opinion. It's not that they don't have opinions. They want to speak the right thing. And they want to speak what the professor want them to know. So it's more like that. So I think because Chinese students are so used to taking tests and doing exams, and so
they're much more regimented.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up, is I think that American students are almost taught to kind of question, not necessarily go against the professor, but really critique the professor and pick their brains. Whereas the Chinese students are much more just, I'm going to listen and do my thing. So I do think that your example coming here, it's a little shocking for you. People are, because I've been in classes where students openly go against the professor very, very directly, not in a mean way, but very, very bluntly, and they can get in some really intense discussion, and it really shows who knows their argument or their point or their information.
Have you guys ever had a philosophy or ethics class in your studies? in China or here?
I mean, I had logical reasoning as an undergrad here in the U.S., and but I didn't have any equivalent in China. The closest thing I had was like an independent study course that was required for my degree, and it was actually interesting because I took American culture and like American culture from the Chinese perspective, and that was like, wow,
Yes.
a lot of things I was like, yeah, that's true. And other times I'm like, professor, no, we don't do that. That's not correct at all. But it was interesting seeing it, looking at your own culture from another country's perspective. That was very
that's
intriguing.
So interesting. I always
Yeah.
want to know. I would always want to know the American perspective about China, because I see a lot of. I can see that China's always on the news, on
Yes,
TV,
yeah.
right?
Especially
But it's
recently.
Yeah. but yeah, I want to know what like ordinary people think about China. So it's really funny to hear what people say about China, and sometimes they don't really have the correct concept of it.
And that's understandable because what you know of a country is what you're exposed to it.
Yes.
And, if what you do and who you hang out with have nothing to do with that country, it's not necessarily good, but it's understandable.
Yeah. One needs to be put themselves in other people's shoes.
Exactly.
In order to kind of fully understand. And I know, especially in a place like the U.S., in which freedoms are abound by so much, like it's kind of hard to like empathize.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of international students, they go to China, I think that sometimes if they're in a position where they have to kind of abide more in the way Chinese students are expected, it's more difficult for them because it's like,
Yes.
no, I'm not going to do this. No, no, I'm not going to.
I'm taking like cultural study, as I mentioned. It's a course. Students can just say anything they want to say, and I always hear that you guys make really harsh criticism on yourself, on the American system, that was harsh. It feels I don't feel like comfortable talking about as an outsider. I don't want to talk about a lot about American issues.
But I'm sure you're learning a huge amount of
I mean,
things.
they're talking about hottest issues. They're talking about presidents. Yeah.
I mean,
And you make criticism on your own.
I think one thing Americans have, and I think it a lot of times it goes a little far, but I think one thing that we do value is objective criticism.
yeah.
And I think that's really important for anyone or anything because, you criticize it, but you don't criticize it just for the sake of criticizing it. You criticize it to improve it, to show what's wrong and make it better.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
and I think Americans are very keen on that, but the problem is they can't take it to the extreme at times.
Yeah, but I mean, I think up to a certain point, it's even better to have like an external party such as yourself, like in these type of conversations,
Yes.
because it's like trying to solve a problem and you've been stuck on it for hours and you don't take a break and take a step back.
Yeah,
So like it's getting that different point of view.
exactly.
That
Like, we started you being in this culture class and me being in that American culture class. You're kind of the person that's not involved with it. You come in fresh and you can inject ideas that they may not think about.
Yeah.
And it may really actually influence things like, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. Because in that class, a lot of times they're like, oh, yeah, we never were thinking about it in this way. But you can introduce that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great American theory, man. It's like bringing every culture into one single pot and try to solve. That's why companies hire engineers from multiple facets.
Yes.
Just because I have a way of solving it, you have a way of solving it, and maybe we can find
Multicultural workforce.
Exactly.
At the best.
That's the main reason that this stuff is very important, right? It's like having everybody's point of view to come up with the best solution.
Exactly. Yes, that's a little about that. And now let's go ahead and move on to food. So now this, of course, is going to be quite different, as you know, Scarlett.
Favorite part.
Yeah, good old food.
Oh,
Now, we can always say that at college you're going to have cafeteria, you're going to have dining facilities, and there's going to be food around campus or in campus that are third-party providers.
Chick-fil-A destroyed me as a student. Oh my god, I couldn't stop eating there.
What do you want to talk about? All cafeterians on campus are bad.
Don't-
I've been to 2 colleges in the United States. I haven't seen anything that is good enough.
Well, I will definitely agree. It's not the best, but I have seen worse.
I mean, that was about the most edible thing. I mean, you could say like there was a Pizza Hut, and I think at one point there was a Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Now there's something else, right?
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
So very unhealthy options, like.
But there were healthy options too. But
yeah, that's true.
I would just say that in a lot of colleges the selection is rather limited. You know, they may have a mix. They may have more vegetarian. They may have more meat lovers. You know, but generally speaking, I think a lot of colleges they don't have a huge variety. It's just it's quite repetitive. Not a bad thing. It's just it really depends on the size of the school and the population there. So, and I would say that I'll go ahead and start it off with kind of comparing my undergrad college here in the States versus my college in China. My undergrad, it was kind of like what we just said. It's more limited. It was good, but relatively limited. Whereas the one in China, it was also very different, but they had four cafeterias in the same building. They had like one like halal for more like for people who more for Muslims or people from Central Asia, more halal style. And then the other three, one was more specialty Chinese, and the other two were like basic Chinese food. Very but very different from the food I had in the U.S. Night and day. Again, I can't emphasize that more.
Was it better over there, or?
That's really difficult to explain because the food here that I'm quite used to, the stuff in China, it was like this ain't Chinese food that I'm familiar with in the U.S. It's not in a totally different category.
That was different. I think because you went to a pretty big university.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, in different universities, I don't think they have many cafeterias or restaurants. Sometimes they don't really separate the kinds or stuff. They just offer you one type of food, and they have a schedule and they work out what is due on Monday and what to serve you on Tuesday, and then they have this schedule and they stick to it. Yeah. So it's like every day you have the same kind of thing. Yeah. I'm saying a lot of things about a lot of bad things about Chinese.
All right. So as a student, what is the number one like place where everybody kind of just like went to go?
Oh,
eat?
The library. Oh, what?
Oh my gosh! I was thinking the same thing.
Right?
Yeah. It's funny.
Students hang out in the library.
I know. It's like, in the U.S., people go to the library. They're doing a thesis. They're doing something toward the end of their program. They have to do a lot of research for, but that's it. Whereas in China, went to our school library. You can't get you can't get a computer. You can't get a space. You're like, whoa! And that means just still stay there all day studying. In the U.S., it's like, okay, Starbucks. There's a Starbucks, yes. Cafes, whatever coffee shop or just general area. That's where they'll go. Yeah. But no, not in China. I mean, I would go to cafes there, and there'd not be many people there. I'm like, there'd be a few, but all the international students, we'd go to the cafes or in and around campus. Chinese would all go to the library. Not 100%, but it was quite proportional, to each.
Yeah. Anywhere with Wi-Fi was like, I used to go to this like small little restaurant down the street, and that's where I used to like spend like my dinner/study time. So.
And then, that's the thing I love about cafes is you can get your coffee, you can get a snack, and you can just power through studying and get your stuff done. Yeah. Library is nice too because you have the resources, but you got to leave in order to get food and things.
The only problem with the library is that there's no coffee, man.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, getting coffee, like, you can't get it as much as here by far. I mean, it's getting more popular among younger people, but you have to go to certain places to get it. Mm. Here, it's, you can get it anywhere. You can buy coffee there, but...
Yeah, I mean, if you're a college student and you don't drink either coffee or tea, you are... I don't know how the heck you even survive your college experience.
Okay.
No, but the food choice is just totally different. I mean, the structure is similar, but I mean, night and day on the food.
But there must have been some like restaurants outside, like everybody just went there.
Yes. Like and I would say probably the most the most popular place on my campus at Zhejiang University was they called Dorojie. Basically means like food, like they call it. My friends translated it as Corruption Street, and I was like, what? And I had to tell them, you shouldn't translate it this way. And they asked me why. And I told them, and they're like, oh, we'll just call it Garden Street. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. But basically, it's a street where you have lots of street vendors, selling all kinds of food, small restaurants, shops. You can get noodles, fried rice, seafood, all kinds of that kind of stuff, very cheap. And a lot of very special, like Chinese food from Hangzhou or the surrounding areas. And I really like that more. And as I was there longer, I would go there more. Because even though it was either the same price or a little more expensive, I like the food better there. More variety.
Yes. Another thing I remember is that I think in the dorms in China, you're not allowed to cook. You cannot do that, right?
Yes, we were not allowed to cook either, but everyone did it. Now they did have communal kitchens on every floor that you could bring stuff and go there, but 80 people per floor trying to get that free, good luck. So people would just do it in their room secretly, especially a lot of the students whose dietary, venue was more limited because of where they're from.
Right. Yes.
I mean, did they allow any appliances like a hot water?
Oh yeah.
Pot
kettle?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can get like a hot water heater for not for tea and stuff like that. Yeah, that wasn't a problem.
You poured a little bit of that in a ramen cup.
Yeah.
There you go. Get some food, man.
Yeah, and I was doing my thesis. That's what I did, crunching that thing out. Powering through. Yeah, I just remember first seeing the food over there. It was, quite different. I was quite shocked. I mean, I eventually grew to really like it, but, it was like, wow, this is different.
This concludes part 1 of this episode of International Immersion. Tune in for part 2, where we will finish up this conversation and delve even deeper into this topic.